What would you do if your own father cut you off from everything? Your inheritance, your financial support, your very future. Imagine waking up one day to find that the lifelines you counted on were gone, severed in a single, irrevocable decision. That's exactly the reality Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are now facing. In a move that has sent shockwaves through royal circles, Buckingham Palace confirmed that King Charles has signed legal documents officially excluding the Sussexes from receiving any royal estates, trusts, or duchy funds. The implications are staggering, not just for Harry and Meghan, but for the future of the monarchy itself. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story of Harry and Meghan has always been one of intense public fascination. From the moment they first appeared together, their union captured imaginations, inspired headlines, and drew admiration from across the globe. A prince and an American actress, challenging tradition, breaking conventions. It was a modern fairy tale in the making. Yet, beneath the glamorous red carpet photos and the carefully curated interviews, tension simmered. Family dynamics, public scrutiny, and conflicting expectations created fault lines that eventually fractured into something far more dramatic than anyone could have predicted. Why does this story matter now? Because this isn't just gossip or tabloid fodder. This is a seismic shift in the royal structure, a decision that effectively cuts off the next generation of Sussexes, Archie and Lilibet, from the financial backbone of the monarchy. It's a statement about power, loyalty, and what happens when private family disagreements collide with centuries-old traditions. And it's happening at a time when the monarchy is under unprecedented public scrutiny, with every decision amplified, dissected, and debated across the world's media platforms. King Charles himself reportedly called the decision painful but necessary. Those words, seemingly measured, carry layers of tension. What could be so necessary that a father would make a choice potentially alienating his own son and daughter-in-law forever? The legal documents, signed and sealed, are absolute. They leave no room for negotiation, no compromise, and no possibility for future financial ties. In effect, Harry and Meghan, and by extension their children, are cut out completely from the financial mechanisms that underpin the monarchy's operations. To fully understand the gravity of this moment, we need to rewind to the days before the publicized rift. Prince Harry, the younger son of Diana, Princess of Wales, grew up acutely aware of the pressures and pitfalls of royal life. From childhood, he witnessed both privilege and pain, learning early how the institution of the monarchy demanded loyalty, discretion, and above all, conformity. Meghan, on the other hand, brought with her a world entirely different, one of Hollywood glamour, independent ambition, and a fiercely modern perspective on fame and influence. Their union promised a bridge between tradition and modernity, yet the very differences that made the couple compelling to the public may also have fueled tension behind palace doors. The turning point, as insiders report, began long before the legal documents were signed. Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from their royal duties, their move to North America, and their outspoken interviews created waves that reached every corner of the palace. It was a move that King Charles had reportedly warned could have consequences, but few, perhaps even within the royal family, anticipated the magnitude of what would follow. What started as a private negotiation about roles and responsibilities gradually escalated into a full-blown crisis, culminating in this unprecedented legal action. Financially, the cutoff is monumental. The Duchy of Cornwall alone represents a multi-million-pound portfolio of estates and investments. Trusts, estates, and other royal funds were not just a safety net. They were a lifelong inheritance meant to secure not only Harry and Meghan's comfort, but also that of their children. Losing access to these resources isn't simply a matter of lifestyle adjustment. It's a statement that signals exclusion, and it has ripple effects that extend far beyond the couple's immediate household. It's about autonomy, legacy, and the weight of a centuries-old institution asserting its authority. But it's not only about money. This is deeply personal. Royal sources say that the decision has created a sense of betrayal and heartbreak within the family. Harry, in particular, who has consistently sought to honor his mother's memory while forging his own path, now finds himself at the center of a conflict that is as public as it is painful. Meghan, equally resilient and determined, faces the challenge of navigating life under an unrelenting global spotlight while being officially cut off from her adopted royal family. The emotional stakes are immense, and they raise questions that no legal document can answer. How does one reconcile family loyalty with institutional responsibility? Can love survive the rigid demands of royalty? And what does it mean for the children caught in the middle of this historical drama? The public reaction has been intense. Across social media, news outlets, and public commentary, opinions have ranged from sympathetic to scathing. Some see this as an act of authoritarian control, a father punishing a son for stepping outside the bounds of expectation. Others argue that it's a pragmatic move, a necessary restructuring of royal finances to protect the integrity of the monarchy. Memes, debates, and viral takes have proliferated, but beneath the humor and outrage lies a deeper, more unsettling truth. This is a family torn apart in a very public way, and history will remember it. Adding to the intrigue are the private conversations and undisclosed deliberations that led to the signing of the legal documents. Sources suggest that there were multiple rounds of discussion, negotiation, and emotional confrontation, none of which were made public. The palace, always careful to control the narrative, maintained a veneer of formality, while behind closed doors, tensions reached extraordinary heights. We can only imagine the emotional weight of those meetings, the arguments, the pleas, and perhaps even tears that accompanied the drafting of documents that would forever alter family dynamics. What makes this story even more compelling is the human element, the emotional, psychological, and ethical considerations that intersect with wealth and power. Harry and Meghan are not just royal figures. They are parents, spouses, and individuals grappling with choices that affect multiple generations. The consequences of King Charles's decision are far-reaching. Archie and Lilibet will grow up knowing that their place in the royal financial system has been redefined, their access removed, and their position in the line of inheritance permanently altered. For a family that places immense value on tradition, protocol, and continuity, this is a seismic shift that challenges the very fabric of what it means to be royal. And yet, despite the gravity of the situation, questions remain. What were the internal calculations that led King Charles to this decision? How much of it was influenced by personal disappointment, how much by practical necessity, and how much by external pressure from advisors and the media? The answers are shrouded in secrecy, but the implications are unmistakable. A line has been drawn, and the Sussexes now exist outside the traditional financial and institutional support of the monarchy. As we explore this story in depth, we'll uncover hidden layers of palace dynamics, historical precedents, and the emotional realities of a family under scrutiny. We'll examine financial records, legal frameworks, and insider reports that shed light on why this moment is not just another headline, but a defining event in modern royal history. We'll also consider the global perspective, looking at how this decision reverberates beyond the UK, affecting public perception, international relations, and the very concept of monarchy in the 21st century. By the end of this exploration, you will not only understand the details of King Charles's decision, but also the human drama behind it, the hopes, the heartbreak, and the consequences that will be felt for years to come. But what really happened behind palace doors that led to this choice will shock you, and the ripple effects are only beginning to unfold. What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What caused the rift that would ultimately lead to Harry and Meghan being cut off from the royal inheritance? Was it ambition, defiance, or simply the collision of two worlds that were never meant to fully merge? To understand the magnitude of what's happening now, we need to go back to the early days, long before the headlines, long before the interviews, and long before the legal documents were signed. The story begins with Harry, a prince whose life was never his own. Born into the most famous family in the world, his childhood was a mixture of privilege and profound loss. His mother, Princess Diana, left a legacy of compassion and defiance that Harry carried with him into adulthood. But he also inherited the weight of tradition, expectation, and scrutiny, forces that would shape his every decision. Imagine growing up in a world where every smile, every word, every glance is analyzed, dissected, and judged by millions. That was Harry's reality. Then came Meghan Markle, an outsider to the royal system. An American actress, independent, assertive, and unapologetically modern. She didn't grow up understanding the rigid etiquette of royal life. She didn't have a family history tied to centuries of monarchy. And yet, the moment she met Harry, something clicked, a shared understanding, a shared sense of wanting to define life on their own terms. But that very independence, which made her so compelling to Harry, would also become a source of tension within the palace. Their courtship was unconventional by royal standards. Public appearances were scrutinized, private gestures magnified, and every interaction dissected. Royal insiders recall meetings and briefings where advisors debated whether Meghan could adapt to the expectations of life inside the palace. There were whispers, doubts, and even resistance from some family members. Yet, for Harry and Meghan, the allure of creating their own path outweighed the pressure to conform. Stepping back from royal duties wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was the result of years of accumulated stress, dissatisfaction, and conflict. Harry struggled with the constant comparison to his brother William, with the relentless media attention, and with the legacy of his mother's death, a shadow that never fully lifted. Meghan faced her own battles, navigating racism, sexism, and relentless scrutiny in a family that historically operated with a very different lens. Together, they sought autonomy, but the cost of that autonomy would become clear in ways they could never have anticipated. The first cracks in the relationship with the monarchy became public when Harry and Meghan announced their plans to step back from official duties. The world reacted with shock. Was this rebellion or pragmatism? Some hailed it as a modern move, a step toward independence and privacy. Others saw it as betrayal, an abandonment of duty. But the truth was far more nuanced. Behind palace walls, the move triggered a cascade of private discussions, strategic planning, and, ultimately, tension that would define the next several years. Financial concerns were always intertwined with this rift. Support from the monarchy was not merely symbolic. It was tangible, tied to estates, investments, and inherited wealth. By stepping back, Harry and Meghan risked severing the very lifelines that had long been assumed secure. Initially, negotiations were said to be cordial, yet the underlying mistrust and miscommunication soon began to erode goodwill. Advisors on both sides struggled to reconcile the couple's ambitions with the expectations of the institution, leading to standoffs and unspoken resentments. There were emotional consequences, too. The strain of constant media scrutiny, combined with the isolation from the inner circle of the royal family, created a pressure cooker environment. Friends of the Sussexes described periods of intense loneliness and frustration, punctuated by moments of fierce determination. Harry and Meghan leaned on each other, but even their bond faced testing moments as they navigated family politics, public opinion, and the constant glare of international attention. And yet, even as the rift grew, there were attempts at reconciliation. Private meetings, letters, and discussions were held behind closed doors. But these gestures, while genuine, were ultimately insufficient. Patterns of mistrust and miscommunication had taken root, and the gulf between the couple and the palace widened. Advisors later admitted that some discussions ended abruptly, leaving both sides feeling unheard and undervalued. The tipping point came gradually. Each decision, small and large, was a brick in the wall that eventually separated the Sussexes from the core of the royal family. Some of these were public, like interviews revealing personal grievances. Others were private, whispered warnings and strategic moves to assert control. What made the situation particularly volatile was the collision of personal emotion with institutional responsibility. This wasn't just a family dispute. It was a family dispute under the microscope of history, tradition, and public expectation. Then came the media storm. Every interview, every social media post, every public appearance became ammunition for critics and fodder for supporters. Analysts debated the motives of both sides. Psychologists examined the toll on mental health, and the world watched as the drama unfolded in real time. The constant attention magnified tensions, turning minor disagreements into crises and escalating the rift into a full-blown divide. Harry and Meghan's decision to move abroad only intensified the strain. It was symbolic and practical, a declaration of independence and a physical separation from the institution that had defined Harry's life. But it also created logistical and financial questions. How would their new life be funded? What role would the monarchy play in supporting them, if any? Could relationships be repaired from across an ocean? These questions loomed over every conversation, every press release, every leaked detail. Underlying all of this was a deep emotional reality, a sense of betrayal and hurt on all sides. For Harry, it was the pain of feeling misunderstood, judged, and constrained by tradition. For Meghan, it was the experience of being scrutinized, marginalized, and forced to navigate a world she never chose to enter. For King Charles and other family members, it was the difficulty of balancing love, duty, and the long-term preservation of an institution that has endured for centuries. And then, the moment everyone feared but expected in some circles, legal documents began circulating within palace channels. These weren't routine updates. They were formal, binding actions that redefined financial relationships and inheritance rights. Behind the scenes, advisors debated phrasing, legal teams weighed implications, and the family grappled with the emotional weight of what would soon be public knowledge. What had been a personal rift was now becoming institutionalized, codified, and unchangeable. The stage was set. The fractures that began years ago had grown into chasms. Every conversation, every decision, every miscommunication contributed to a moment that would redefine the lives of Harry and Meghan and the monarchy itself. And yet, despite the gravity of the situation, there was still one question hanging over everyone. Could this rift ever be healed? Or had the lines been drawn so clearly, so forcefully, that reconciliation was impossible? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that everything you counted on for security, everything your family promised, has been taken away. That is exactly the position Prince Harry and Meghan Markle now face. Being cut off from the financial support of the monarchy isn't just a monetary adjustment. It's an upheaval of identity, lifestyle, and expectations. The documents signed by King Charles sever more than just cash flow. They sever a connection to centuries of royal legacy and privilege. But what does that really mean? How does it affect day-to-day life, long-term planning, and the future of the Sussexes' children? To understand the depth of this decision, we have to break down the royal finances, the nature of inheritance, and the stakes involved. Let's start with the Duchy of Cornwall. This is not just some passive investment. It's a vast portfolio of land, properties, and financial instruments that generate millions of pounds in revenue every year. Traditionally, it provides the heir to the throne with an independent income separate from taxpayer funding. Harry had access to this income as the son of the Duke of Cornwall. But with King Charles's decision, Harry and Meghan are officially removed from any entitlement to these funds. That's a significant blow, not just financially, but symbolically. It signals exclusion from the very apparatus that sustains royal influence. Then there are the trusts and estates. Over centuries, the monarchy has amassed a network of funds designed to ensure financial stability for family members and to manage royal property. These trusts aren't just piggy banks. They're legally protected funds that provide long-term security. Being cut off from them is more than a loss of comfort. It's a complete severance from the inherited financial mechanisms that underpin royal life. Think of it as a lifeline being deliberately severed, leaving the beneficiaries to navigate a world they were once insulated from. But the financial fallout doesn't stop with the couple. It extends to their children. Archie and Lilibet, while young, now face a reality in which they are officially excluded from inheriting duchy funds or other royal estates. This has enormous implications. It's not just about wealth. It's about identity and opportunity. Financial support isn't simply a cushion. It enables access to education, residences, staff, and opportunities that shape future influence. By cutting this off, King Charles has effectively redefined what it means to grow up as a royal, at least for this branch of the family. So why take such a drastic step? Sources say King Charles described the move as painful but necessary. But necessary for what? Protection of the institution? Enforcement of discipline? Or a response to perceived disloyalty? The truth is likely a combination of all three. By formally cutting financial ties, Charles sends a message to both the family and the public. The monarchy is not merely a family. It is an institution that operates under rules, and breaking from tradition has consequences. The immediate impact on Harry and Meghan is significant. Their lifestyle, previously supported by royal funds, now must be self-sustaining. They can no longer rely on income from trusts or estates. And while they have built alternative revenue streams through deals, speaking engagements, and projects, these are unpredictable compared to the steady backing of the duchy. This creates both pressure and freedom. They are financially independent, but the independence comes with immense responsibility and risk. But there's another layer, the symbolic message to the public and the royal family. Wealth in the monarchy is not just personal, it is public. Cutting off the Sussexes from funds reinforces the notion that privilege is conditional. It draws a line between insiders and outsiders, between those who adhere to expectations and those who forge independent paths. It's a statement about loyalty, control, and the limits of personal autonomy within the royal structure. Insiders suggest that the decision was not made lightly. Legal advisors, financial planners, and family members weighed the consequences. The formal documents outlining the severance are carefully drafted, leaving no room for dispute. It's absolute. Unlike past arrangements where royal family members had flexibility, Harry and Meghan's removal from financial entitlements is unequivocal. It's a permanence that changes the trajectory of their lives. Financially, the severance also means a shift in responsibilities. No longer will the palace absorb costs for security, staffing, or residences in the same way. Harry and Meghan now shoulder a greater burden for the practical realities of their lives. Their choices about housing, education, and travel will be framed by their independent finances rather than royal provision. And while they have demonstrated an ability to generate income through ventures like Netflix and Spotify, the stakes are higher. One misstep or underperforming project could create real financial strain, something previously unimaginable in their royal context. For the children, the ripple effects are subtle but profound. They may no longer have automatic access to royal properties or estates, nor will they enjoy the same funding for schooling or staff that their cousins might. This redefines the concept of royal privilege for this branch of the family. It's a financial line that doubles as an emotional one, signaling a separation that will have consequences for identity, public perception, and even family relationships. The broader implications extend to other members of the monarchy as well. By making this move, King Charles sets a precedent. Future generations will see that inheritance is not guaranteed. It can be revoked if expectations are not met. This could influence decisions, behavior, and loyalty within the family for years to come. The message is clear. Personal ambition or defiance carries financial consequences, and the monarchy prioritizes institutional stability over individual sentiment. But the fallout isn't purely practical. It's also deeply emotional. Harry, who has consistently expressed a desire to honor his mother's legacy while asserting his independence, now faces a stark reality. A father's decision has reshaped his financial landscape forever. Meghan, equally independent and resourceful, must navigate life knowing that traditional royal support is no longer available. The combination of public scrutiny and private loss creates an emotional weight that few outside the family can fully comprehend. Public perception is another layer of complexity. Social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and debate. Some argue that Harry and Meghan are victims of an outdated institution, while others see the move as a logical enforcement of boundaries. Memes and headlines proliferated, capturing both humor and outrage. But beneath the noise is a serious conversation about wealth, responsibility, and the balance between independence and family loyalty. Interestingly, some financial experts suggest that the cutoff may actually provide the Sussexes with more freedom. Without obligations tied to the duchy or royal trusts, they can pursue ventures and investments without restrictions. Yet freedom comes at a cost. The security, the legacy, and the privilege once guaranteed are now absent. This duality, freedom versus security, independence versus exclusion, is at the heart of the financial fallout. Legal analysts also point out that this decision is unusually formalized. While previous royals have occasionally faced disputes over inheritance, few have been codified in a way that is so absolute. This ensures that there can be no retroactive claims, no negotiated settlements, and no ambiguity. It is, in essence, a definitive closure on financial entitlement, a reality the Sussexes must now fully accept. Even within the palace, sources suggest that emotions ran high during the drafting and signing of these documents. Advisors had to mediate between the institution's interests and personal feelings. The legal team worked meticulously to ensure that every line left no room for misinterpretation. It was a calculated move, combining both financial prudence and a statement about the boundaries of family loyalty. But despite all this planning, uncertainty remains. Harry and Meghan's ability to adapt, generate alternative income, and maintain a public image under constant scrutiny will determine how well they navigate this new reality. For a couple accustomed to some level of public adoration but now cut off from traditional support, every decision carries amplified consequences. And yet, as financial as this fallout may seem, it's intertwined with emotion, legacy, and identity. The loss of financial support is also a loss of symbolic connection to the monarchy, a declaration that Harry and Meghan are no longer insiders in the truest sense. The stakes are generational, affecting not only them but their children, their public perception, and the long-term narrative of the royal family. But what made this financial decision even more extraordinary is what came immediately after: the unexpected moves, the private discussions, and the strategic reactions that few saw coming. It's a story that reaches beyond money and into the heart of family, loyalty, and power. And what happened next would reveal just how far this rift had truly gone. What would drive a father to make a choice that could redefine his relationship with his son forever? When King Charles signed the legal documents cutting Prince Harry and Meghan Markle off from royal inheritance and financial support, he didn't just make a fiscal decision. He made a personal one, and one that is already sending shockwaves through the family. But was this truly a necessary action to protect the monarchy? Or was it a punitive measure aimed at asserting authority and enforcing discipline? The answer is far from simple, and the story behind it is filled with tension, emotion, and surprising twists. The decision didn't happen in isolation. Sources close to Buckingham Palace describe weeks of intense discussions and private meetings. Advisors, legal teams, and family members all weighed in, each bringing their perspective to the table. On one side, the argument was practical. Harry and Meghan had stepped back from their royal duties, moved abroad, and built independent lives. Their separation from official duties created a gray area regarding financial support and inheritance. On the other side, there were personal and emotional stakes: family loyalty, the history between father and son, and the painful legacy of Harry's mother, Princess Diana. Balancing these competing interests was no easy task. King Charles reportedly viewed the situation through both a personal and institutional lens. Emotionally, it is believed he experienced frustration, disappointment, and perhaps even betrayal. Harry's choices, especially going public with criticisms of royal life and stepping away from traditional roles, challenged Charles's vision of family unity and the continuity of the monarchy. Institutionally, Charles had to consider the precedent this would set for other family members and the public perception of the royal family. Allowing exceptions for one branch could be interpreted as favoritism or weakness. The term "painful but necessary," used by Charles, underscores the complexity of the decision. On one hand, it conveys regret and sorrow, a recognition that this action could damage personal relationships. On the other, it frames the decision as a strategic move, prioritizing the long-term stability of the monarchy over individual sentiment. But what exactly made it necessary? Some insiders suggest it was about more than money. It was about control. By clearly defining the financial boundaries and inheritance rights, Charles asserted authority, sent a message about expectations, and closed loopholes that might have caused ambiguity for future generations. Yet there is an argument to be made that this decision was also punitive. Critics argue that cutting off Harry and Meghan financially is a harsh response to behavior that, while unconventional, does not warrant such permanent exclusion. The Sussexes were already navigating a high-pressure, high-stakes public life. Removing financial support and inheritance access amplifies the stakes dramatically. The move is seen by some as a warning to other family members: stray from the expected path, and consequences will follow. Whether this was intended as punishment or whether it is merely a byproduct of necessity, is a question that continues to provoke debate among royal watchers. Adding to the complexity is the timing of the decision. It comes after years of tension, media scrutiny, and public revelations. Harry and Meghan's interviews, public appearances, and business ventures have kept the royal family in headlines. From the tell-all interviews to the Netflix and Spotify deals, the Sussexes have generated both admiration and criticism. The financial cutoff could be interpreted as a response to this increased independence, a measure to reinforce boundaries, or even a preemptive step to ensure that future behavior aligns with expectations. The emotional dimension cannot be overstated. Harry's relationship with his father has been publicly complex for years. Interviews and biographies hint at moments of tension, misunderstanding, and unresolved grief. Charles's decision, while framed as necessary, inevitably introduces a deep emotional rupture. For a family already navigating decades of public scrutiny, personal loss, and institutional pressure, this move is a defining moment, shaping relationships for generations. It's also important to consider Meghan's role in this dynamic. As an outsider to the royal family, she has been both a partner and a lightning rod for criticism. Her insistence on independence, privacy, and agency challenges traditional royal norms, which may have influenced Charles's perception of the situation. The documents cutting financial ties are as much about Harry's actions as they are about Meghan's presence and influence. It's a convergence of personalities, expectations, and institutional constraints that creates an extraordinarily high-stakes scenario. Legal advisors reportedly spent weeks ensuring that the documents were airtight. Every clause, every line, every term was scrutinized to eliminate ambiguity. The result is a permanent severance that leaves no room for negotiation or reinterpretation. Harry and Meghan are no longer beneficiaries of duchy funds, estates, or trusts, effectively ending their financial connection to the monarchy. What makes this extraordinary is that it applies not only to the couple but also to their children, creating a generational ripple effect. Some observers see this as a long-term strategic move. By clearly defining boundaries, Charles protects the monarchy from potential conflicts, ensures transparency, and reduces the risk of future public disputes over financial matters. It establishes a precedent. Inheritance and financial support are conditional, not guaranteed. In this view, the decision is less about punishment and more about safeguarding the institution. Yet, for those looking at the human story, the decision carries a heavy emotional weight. Harry, already haunted by the loss of his mother and the pressures of royal life, now faces the added reality of permanent exclusion from resources and support. Meghan, equally resilient, confronts the challenge of securing a future for her family outside the traditional framework of royal privilege. The combination of emotional loss and practical consequence is profound, and it raises questions about the balance between family loyalty and institutional authority. Public reaction has been polarized. Supporters of the decision argue that it was inevitable, a necessary step to maintain order within the royal family. Critics see it as punitive and emotionally damaging, pointing out that the Sussexes have sought autonomy, not confrontation. Social media, news outlets, and global audiences are all weighing in, often turning personal family decisions into political and cultural debates. The scrutiny adds another layer of pressure and demonstrates just how public the consequences of private decisions have become. Historical context adds even more depth. Monarchs have, over centuries, taken steps to regulate inheritance and financial support for family members, but few moves have been as public and definitive as this one. Charles's decision can be seen as part of a long tradition of royal discipline, yet it also marks a modern adaptation, reflecting the complex realities of media scrutiny, global attention, and financial independence in the 21st century. Some palace insiders hint at additional, less tangible factors. Reports suggest that discussions surrounding the cutoff were influenced by internal advice about public perception, media impact, and even potential legal challenges. While the documents are legally solid, the optics of the decision had to be carefully managed. Charles and his advisors were acutely aware that the world was watching and that the story would dominate headlines. Managing the narrative was as crucial as the financial move itself. There are also whispers of reconciliation attempts, though these remain unverified. Private conversations, messages, and meetings may have occurred to gauge the possibility of compromise. But the finality of the legal documents suggests that, even if these attempts happened, they were insufficient to alter the course of action. The severity of the measure indicates that Charles felt no alternative would adequately protect the interests of the monarchy. The implications extend beyond the palace walls. Financial independence, public scrutiny, and the loss of formal ties force Harry and Meghan into new realities. Every decision about business, media, philanthropy, and public engagement now carries heightened significance. The stakes are not just personal, they are institutional, historical, and deeply public. And yet, despite all the planning, strategy, and legal precision, the emotional consequences remain unpredictable. How will Harry and Charles interact moving forward? Can Meghan find a place within a family that has officially severed financial ties? How will the children grow up knowing that their grandfather has legally excluded them from inheritance? These are questions that cannot be answered by documents or law. They exist in the realm of human emotion, family bonds, and historical consequence. But what makes this moment truly shocking is what happened immediately after the decision became known. Behind the scenes, private meetings and reactions unfolded that few anticipated. It's a story that goes beyond legality, finance, and duty. It's about loyalty, betrayal, and the human cost of protecting an institution. And what came next would set the stage for conflicts and revelations that would captivate the world. What really happens behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace when the public only sees polished ceremonies and smiling portraits? What secrets, whispered meetings, and private confrontations shape decisions that affect generations of the royal family? The financial cutoff of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle didn't happen in a vacuum. Behind closed doors, Buckingham Palace became a pressure cooker of emotion, strategy, and intrigue, a place where loyalty, fear, and ambition collided in ways the public could never imagine. The palace, as insiders describe it, is not just a home. It's an institution built on centuries of tradition, hierarchy, and protocol. Every hallway, every chamber, every meeting room carries weight, literal and symbolic. Decisions here are rarely simple. They involve layers of advisors, legal counsel, financial experts, and senior staff, each with their own perspective, influence, and, sometimes, agenda. When King Charles decided to sever financial ties with Harry and Meghan, it triggered a complex chain of events inside the palace, a chain reaction that exposed rifts, loyalties, and rivalries. It begins with the staff. From private secretaries to aides, the palace workforce is deeply embedded in family operations. These individuals are the gatekeepers, the intermediaries, and sometimes the silent witnesses to history. When news of the legal documents began to circulate internally, reactions varied. Some were reportedly relieved, believing the move would clarify financial responsibilities and reduce ambiguity. Others were concerned, knowing that the decision would strain personal relationships and draw intense public scrutiny. Conversations in staff corridors, often hushed and cautious, revealed the tension. Loyalty to the monarchy was paramount, yet empathy for the individuals involved created internal conflict. Then there were the advisors and legal teams, drafting documents that would permanently sever financial support and inheritance rights required meticulous attention. Every word mattered. Every clause had to anticipate potential disputes, and every line needed to withstand public and legal scrutiny. Sources report that multiple drafts were debated, each iteration scrutinized for legal loopholes and emotional ramifications. One senior advisor reportedly said, "It wasn't just about money. It was about legacy, precedent, and protecting the monarchy from future chaos." These professionals operated under immense pressure, aware that any misstep could escalate into public scandal or even legal challenge. Private meetings among senior royals themselves were, according to insiders, intense. King Charles, in particular, had to navigate a delicate balance between authority and paternal instinct. Sources suggest that emotions ran high, with family members expressing frustration, sorrow, and at times disbelief. The discussions were reportedly layered with tension, loyalty to the institution versus loyalty to family, duty versus compassion, tradition versus modernity. Every argument, every hesitation, every raised voice contributed to an atmosphere of high-stakes decision-making rarely seen by outsiders. Leaks became an inevitable byproduct of this tension. Buckingham Palace, despite its best efforts at confidentiality, is a massive organization. Staff turnover, conflicting interests, and media pressure create openings for information to escape. Over time, details about the cutoff and surrounding deliberations began to appear in press reports, sometimes accurate, sometimes speculative. Insiders suggest that some leaks were unintentional, a passing comment in a hallway, an offhand remark, or a confidential memo that found its way to the press. Others were, perhaps, strategic, information released deliberately to manage public perception, to soften backlash, or to shape the narrative in favor of the palace. These leaks fueled a media frenzy. Headlines splashed across newspapers and online platforms, often highlighting drama and tension rather than nuance. The global audience, accustomed to sensational stories about the royal family, consumed these reports with intense fascination. Social media amplified the discourse, creating a feedback loop. Palace leaks prompted news coverage, which in turn prompted more leaks, commentary, and speculation. The cycle created an environment in which private decisions became public spectacle almost instantly. Yet, beyond media speculation, the real drama unfolded in private chambers and corridors. Sources describe emotional confrontations, long hours of discussion, and moments of frustration that bordered on conflict. One aide reportedly whispered, "There were times when it felt like the palace itself was holding its breath, waiting to see which way the family would move." The stress wasn't limited to the senior royals. Staff were emotionally invested in outcomes, aware that decisions could impact not only family relations, but also their own roles and responsibilities. The secrecy also extended to documentation. The legal papers cutting off Harry and Meghan were reportedly guarded with extreme care. Only a select number of people had access to drafts, and discussions about the content were tightly controlled. This level of confidentiality was necessary to prevent leaks, but ironically, it also fueled speculation and anxiety among those who were not privy to the details. The palace, in effect, had to manage not just the decision itself, but the human element of secrecy, curiosity, and fear of misinterpretation. Emotional stakes were high. King Charles, who reportedly described the decision as painful but necessary, had to reconcile his duties as monarch with his role as father. Sources describe moments of private reflection, during which Charles considered both the long-term institutional consequences and the immediate personal impact. There were reportedly late-night discussions, private letters, and attempts to find compromise, though ultimately the formal documents prevailed. The human cost, however, was undeniable. The leaks that eventually reached the press were dissected in real time. Analysts, journalists, and commentators speculated about the motivations, relationships, and potential fallout. Public debate erupted. Was Charles enforcing discipline or exacting revenge? Were Harry and Meghan victims of circumstance or architects of their own exclusion? Every leak, whether small or significant, added to the tension and kept the global audience riveted. Interestingly, the palace's internal communication strategy was described as meticulous but reactive. Some insiders indicated that while contingency plans existed for public announcements, the sheer volume and speed of leaks made control difficult. Each revelation required careful messaging, clarification, and sometimes damage control. Advisors had to balance transparency with discretion, a nearly impossible task given the high stakes and the global attention. The secrecy and leaks also highlighted contradictions within the palace itself. While loyalty to the crown is paramount, personal alliances, sympathies, and disagreements created conflicting narratives. Staff members, whether out of empathy, frustration, or self-interest, sometimes shared information selectively. These small acts of disclosure, intentional or not, contributed to a sense of unpredictability, keeping both the royal family and the public on edge. Amid the leaks and tension, one theme became clear. The palace is both a family and an institution, and balancing these identities is extraordinarily complex. Personal relationships collide with public duty, emotional bonds clash with legal obligations, and historical precedent meets modern scrutiny. Decisions like cutting off Harry and Meghan are not purely financial. They are profoundly human, laden with emotion, politics, and symbolism. And yet, despite all the scrutiny, secrecy, and leaks, one fact remains undeniable. What happened behind palace doors is far more complex than any headline or social media post can convey. Meetings, confrontations, and negotiations created a web of relationships and emotions that shaped the final decision in ways only insiders truly understand. The public sees the result, but the private journey, fraught with tension, emotion, and strategic maneuvering, remains largely hidden. But what makes this story even more compelling is that not all leaks were accidental. Some were strategic, intended to send messages, test public reaction, or pressure family members into certain positions. The interplay between secrecy and selective disclosure created a chessboard of intrigue, where every move was calculated and every revelation carried consequences. The palace, in other words, became both a battlefield and a theater, and Harry and Meghan were at the center of the unfolding drama. And just when it seemed the narrative could be contained, a particularly shocking leak emerged. A private conversation, previously undisclosed, that revealed just how deep the tension had become. This revelation would not only shock the royal family, but also fuel public debate, intensify media scrutiny, and set the stage for conflicts and revelations yet to come. What came next would show that behind Buckingham Palace's stately exterior, loyalty, power, and emotion are constantly in flux, and that even the most carefully guarded secrets can have explosive consequences. How does the world react when a royal decision of this magnitude suddenly becomes public? For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the news that they had been cut off from royal inheritance and financial support didn't just make headlines. It ignited a global conversation, a storm of opinions, memes, and debates that reached every corner of the planet. Public reaction has been visceral, intense, and polarizing, revealing not just opinions about the Sussexes, but also deep-seated perceptions of monarchy, tradition, and family loyalty. From the moment the story broke, social media exploded. Within hours, hashtags supporting both sides were trending. Hashtag Team Harry and hashtag Team Charles became digital battlefields, each post, tweet, and video dissecting motives, morality, and consequences. Memes spread like wildfire, blending humor with pointed commentary. Some painted the move as cold and calculated, a father punishing his son for stepping out of line. Others framed Harry and Meghan as entitled or reckless, exaggerating the risks and consequences of independence. The rapidity and intensity of social media reactions created a unique pressure on the royal family, who were simultaneously trying to maintain dignity, authority, and relevance. Traditional media, too, surged with coverage. Major newspapers, online outlets, and television networks produced analysis, speculation, and commentary. News anchors dissected the timing, the financial implications, and the emotional undertones of the decision. Talk shows debated loyalty, betrayal, and precedent. Columnists offered historical comparisons, recalling other royal disputes, while investigative journalists delved into financial documents and insider reports. The story dominated front pages and trending topics, ensuring that no one could avoid forming an opinion, or at least encountering one. Fans of the Sussexes were vocal and emotional. Many praised Harry and Meghan for asserting independence and pursuing a life outside the rigid confines of royal tradition. They framed the financial cutoff as evidence of an institution clinging to outdated hierarchies, punishing those who dare to modernize. Supporters argued that Harry and Meghan's desire for privacy, autonomy, and freedom was reasonable and even admirable, painting the couple as resilient under extraordinary pressure. Online petitions, commentary, and fan videos reflected not just sympathy but advocacy, creating a sense of public solidarity with the Sussexes. Critics, on the other hand, framed the decision as logical, even necessary. They argued that the monarchy is an institution with rules, and stepping outside official duties carries consequences. To them, financial support and inheritance are privileges tied to responsibility, not entitlements. Articles and editorials highlighted the idea of accountability, framing the cutoff as a reinforcement of order within the royal family. In some quarters, critics went further, questioning the choices and priorities of Harry and Meghan, suggesting that independence should come with acceptance of consequences. The press also focused on the children, Archie and Lilibet. Headlines questioned what the financial severance meant for them and how it would shape their identities within the royal framework. The public debate often blurred the lines between sympathy, judgment, and speculation. Parents, families, and social commentators weighed in, reflecting broader cultural attitudes toward inheritance, wealth, and family loyalty. The story became a lens for examining not just royalty but social values, generational expectations, and cultural divides. Interestingly, the intensity of the public reaction revealed a deep fascination with both human emotion and institutional power. People are drawn to drama, especially when it involves families under extraordinary circumstances. In this case, the combination of wealth, power, personal conflict, and global attention created a perfect storm for engagement. Every new leak, statement, or revelation sparked commentary, ensuring that the story remained in the public eye far longer than ordinary news cycles. International reaction added another layer. In the United States, where Meghan is a citizen and the couple has built a significant presence, media coverage often emphasized autonomy, independence, and breaking free from oppressive traditions. Commentators praised Meghan's resilience and Harry's courage, framing their struggles in terms of personal rights and freedom. In the United Kingdom, the narrative was more divided. Some celebrated the monarchy's enforcement of tradition, while others criticized perceived coldness or inflexibility. The story became a cultural touchstone, prompting debate about modernity, duty, and the relevance of monarchy in contemporary society. Memes and social commentary also reflected irony and humor, often highlighting contradictions and unexpected twists. People compared palace drama to reality television, corporate boardroom disputes, or family arguments exaggerated to epic proportions. While humorous, these reactions underscored a serious point. The public was both entertained and emotionally invested, seeing elements of themselves reflected in a story of wealth, power, and family conflict. Yet the intensity of the reaction wasn't purely external. Palace insiders reportedly monitored public sentiment closely. Advisors and communication teams tracked reactions, analyzed trends, and prepared responses. Every tweet, post, and headline was evaluated for potential impact on the royal family's reputation, the public perception of King Charles, and the global image of the monarchy. The modern reality is that public opinion can influence institutional behavior, particularly in an era of social media immediacy and relentless 24-hour news cycles. The story also prompted conversations about mental health and emotional well-being. Psychologists, commentators, and public figures weighed in, considering the pressure on Harry and Meghan, as well as the effects on family dynamics. Discussions of stress, trauma, and resilience entered mainstream discourse, highlighting that financial and institutional decisions are not isolated from human emotion. The intersection of duty, expectation, and personal need became a major talking point. Financial analysts entered the conversation as well. Columns and reports examined the practical ramifications of being cut off from royal inheritance. What would it mean for their lifestyle, investments, and projects? Could Harry and Meghan sustain their ventures independently? Would they need to adjust ambitions or living arrangements? These discussions made the story tangible, connecting abstract royal tradition to concrete outcomes that audiences could understand and debate. The polarizing reaction highlighted one of the most striking aspects of this story. Perception is everything. Different audiences interpret events through the lens of personal values, national identity, and cultural expectations. Some see injustice, some see pragmatism, and some see drama amplified by media and social networks. The narrative is constantly shifting, shaped by leaks, interviews, commentary, and speculation. For Harry and Meghan, navigating this landscape is a constant balancing act, where every statement, project, or appearance carries heightened attention and judgment. Despite all the reactions, one thing became clear: public fascination is not fading. Every revelation about financial decisions, family dynamics, or institutional strategy fuels continued interest. The world is watching not just for the facts, but for the human story, the emotions, tensions, and potential resolutions that unfold in real time. For those invested in the drama, every leak or insider report is a window into a world that blends history, wealth, power, and family conflict in ways few can fully imagine. But even as social media trends and news cycles dominate attention, deeper questions remain. How will this public scrutiny affect Harry and Meghan's next steps? Can the couple reconcile with the family under such circumstances? What long-term effects will the financial and emotional severance have on their children and their place in the royal narrative? And just when it seemed the media frenzy might settle into predictable patterns, another revelation emerged, one that would shock the public, intensify debate, and add an entirely new layer of tension to an already explosive story. What does it mean to be born into royalty when the very foundation of your financial and institutional security has been cut away before you can even vote? For Archie and Lilibet, the children of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the legal documents signed by King Charles represent more than a financial shift. They mark a profound alteration of their place in the royal hierarchy and the privileges that historically came with it. Understanding the implications for these children requires examining not only money and inheritance, but also identity, public perception, and the long-term trajectory of their lives within and outside the monarchy. From birth, Archie and Lilibet were subject to a unique reality, the intersection of family, fame, and history. Unlike most children, every smile, every milestone, every appearance would be scrutinized by the media. Even their names carried symbolic weight. Archie, chosen for its grounded, accessible feel, and Lilibet, a nod to Harry's grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II. These names link them both to tradition and to a personal choice, a delicate balance between royal expectation and parental autonomy. But names alone can't shield them from the financial and institutional consequences of their parents' decisions. Being excluded from royal inheritance isn't merely a matter of losing money. In the royal context, inheritance encompasses access to estates, trust funds, and resources designed to ensure both comfort and influence across generations. Traditionally, royal children can rely on duchy income, family trusts, and estates to fund their education, residences, and public roles. For Archie and Lilibet, these sources are now legally off-limits. They must navigate a world where the safety net that might have existed for them has been permanently removed, a reality that has profound implications for their upbringing. The financial severance also sends a symbolic message. The palace's decision communicates that lineage alone does not guarantee entitlement. Even direct descendants can be excluded if circumstances, behavior, independence, or perceived rebellion conflict with institutional expectations. For Harry and Meghan's children, this is a striking lesson. Privilege is conditional, not automatic. It reframes the meaning of royalty from birthright to earned or granted status, adding layers of complexity to how these children will understand their identity. Insiders suggest that this exclusion has emotional consequences for Harry and Meghan as parents. They reportedly wrestle with the balance between shielding their children from palace politics and ensuring they understand their heritage. Financial independence for the family may provide freedom, but it also comes with the burden of responsibility at a very young age. Decisions about education, security, and lifestyle that would have been supported by the monarchy are now fully in the hands of their parents. Every choice carries weight, risk, and potential scrutiny. Security is another dimension. Royal children typically benefit from extensive protections funded by the crown or related institutions. With the financial cutoff, some of these supports may be redefined or limited, meaning Harry and Meghan have to plan and fund security measures independently. This adds another layer of pressure, one that ordinary families rarely experience, but which is magnified for public figures constantly under global attention. It's a practical consequence that also underscores the symbolic significance of exclusion. They are now operating entirely outside the traditional royal safety net. Education is equally impacted. Royal children often have access to elite schools, tutoring, and enrichment opportunities funded through trusts or estates. While Harry and Meghan are capable of providing high-quality education independently, the financial severance removes institutional assistance that previously would have been automatic. This forces the couple to make strategic, deliberate choices about the children's schooling, further emphasizing the transition from inherited privilege to self-sufficiency. Public perception complicates matters even further. The media scrutinizes every aspect of royal children's lives, from playdates to family trips, often framing stories in terms of controversy or drama. With the Sussexes now fully independent, Archie and Lilibet's every action could be interpreted through the lens of their exclusion from inheritance. Critics may frame them as entitled or deprived, while supporters see resilience and independence. This constant external gaze shapes childhood in ways ordinary families cannot fully imagine. Emotionally, the impact is subtle but significant. While the children are young, Harry and Meghan reportedly make careful decisions to preserve normalcy and emotional stability. Yet the shadow of exclusion lingers, particularly as they grow older and begin to understand concepts like privilege, wealth, and inheritance. Conversations about identity, family, and legacy will inevitably intersect with public narratives, adding complexity to how these children perceive themselves and their place in the world. Another factor is family dynamics. Relationships with extended family members, including grandparents and cousins, may be influenced by these financial boundaries. The exclusion from inheritance could create subtle but lasting distinctions between the Sussex children and other royal children, affecting not just resources but also social and ceremonial roles within the monarchy. How Archie and Lilibet relate to cousins like Prince George or Princess Charlotte may be shaped by both opportunity and perception. The long-term implications extend to adulthood. The financial and symbolic separation from the monarchy means that Archie and Lilibet will likely chart a very different path from other royals. Their opportunities, responsibilities, and expectations will be defined more by personal achievement and family guidance than by inherited wealth or institutional support. This could foster independence and resilience, but it also imposes unique pressures. They are expected to thrive without the traditional safety net that other royals might take for granted. Legal experts note that this severance is unusual in its clarity and permanence. While royal inheritance disputes have occurred before, few decisions are as codified and indisputable as this one. This creates certainty, but it also eliminates flexibility. There will be no retroactive entitlement, no future adjustments, and no ambiguity for Harry and Meghan's children. The decision is final, sending a clear message about both family boundaries and institutional authority. Psychologists and child development specialists weigh in on the potential effects. They suggest that while financial exclusion does not inherently harm children, the combination of public scrutiny, awareness of family conflict, and media coverage can influence self-perception and social development. How Harry and Meghan navigate these challenges, what values, support systems, and coping mechanisms they provide, will be critical in shaping the children's resilience, identity, and sense of security. Interestingly, some analysts suggest that exclusion from royal inheritance could also be empowering. Without predetermined roles and financial dependency, Archie and Lilibet have the opportunity to define themselves on their own terms. They may grow up valuing independence, creativity, and personal agency in ways that are less constrained by tradition. In this sense, the financial severance is not just a limitation. It is a catalyst for a distinct identity